Hey everyone, and welcome. You're listening to the next episode of Turn Zero Drive Home Edition. This is a solo Marvel Snap podcast where I talk about the latest info you need before you start the first turn of the game while I drive home from work. My name is August, and let's drive home. So we have just recently got a new balance update for the game. Our latest OTA is hit, and it looks like we're seeing changes to 7 cards. 2 nerfs and five buffs. I think this one's going to be pretty good. Just like first impressions of like the OTA on a whole. Recently, I've been like not super excited about the OTAs. I feel like they've either missed the mark or just like not really doing much to buff older cards. But when I look at this one, I feel like it hits the things that I like to see. So we'll see if that's any good. The two nerfs are pretty substantial, I think, and I think people are going to be happy about these. These are ones that are targeted towards decks that have been kind of overstaying their welcome for different people. So we'll start there. The first one is Sparky. So Sparky is going from a 2/1 with activate, give your card that last move plus 3 power and move it back to its previous location. It's getting a adjustment to a 2/2, but then the ability is changing. So it says activate, give your card that last moved plus 2 power and move it back to its previous location. So yes, it is getting an increase of power on its base, like it's becoming a 2/2 instead of a 2/1, but it's losing out 1 power that it gives on a buff. It's going from plus 3 to plus 2. This is significant because of what the plus power actually does, and it's what it's giving its power to is stuff like Human Torch and Dagger, mostly stuff that's able to take that power and run with it, right? Human Torch being the biggest defender, any power you put on that thing is being multiplied. So as much as we can lower that bonus, the better, right? Is this the kind of buff that means that Sparky's cut from the deck? Absolutely not. No, like this, like you definitely are still running Sparky if you're running move Human Torch shenanigans. But what it does is it makes your Sparky less of an impact. It means you have to, if you have to run it, then even in its nerf form, then that means that it's not going to provide the same amount of value that it was before, but it still requires you to keep it in the deck slots. It reminds me of, I think the go-to example of this is from ages and ages ago, back when Thanos was ruling the meta, and they nerfed Psylocke from 2/2 to 2/1. And it's just like you had to keep it in the deck because you need it. It was back when Thanos was all about ramping, but it made the individual card less impactful. And that's what the Sparky nerf is doing. It's taking a card you have to keep in the deck, but making it worse for you. I'm happy to see this. I personally think that the move, like Human Torch deck, is really good. It's a little bit overbearing even. Like, yeah, there are ways to combat it with, like, Shadow King and Mercury and stuff, but I just think like the type of power that it puts out is too big, in my opinion. Like when you start to see Human Torches like moved like 5-6 times, even 3-4 times a game, and you're getting like just numbers that you just can't compete with head to head, then I'm starting to think that we might need to look at this a little harder, and I'm glad that they're agreeing with this Sparky nerf. The next one that's being changed, the next nerf we got here is to Storm. So this is one that a lot of people are going to be happy about. Let's read it here. So Storm is going from a 3/2 to a 3/1. So the ability is still staying the same, like it's still flooding the location. That part of Storm is not changing, but it's making it weaker. We've seen recently on the ladder a resurgence of that Storm, War Machine, Legion combo deck. Now, I actually like I like the deck. I'll just come out and say it because I like that Marvel Snap has ways to fight on different axes. Like you can go and compete for points. You can make big combo decks that go like astronomically big, or you have this option of fighting like board space. And I think that just adds another interesting dynamic to the game. Clog decks used to be like one of like my go-tos, right? But they've been steadily like reducing the amount of ways to put cards on your opponent's side of the board. So we're kind of losing out on this theater of war here. So this lockdown deck is the next way to do that. If you can stop them from playing cards there, then you have an easier time winning the location. Storm on her own, being a 3/1 now, makes that so much harder to like win that specific location. There are like, if you're facing off against somebody that is prepared for your strategy, and they throw a Cosmo down on the Storm lane, so you can't go back and Legion it later. Your then hope is, okay, I got to make sure I'm winning the Storm location. And if you keep lowering the amount of power that this deck has, that becomes harder and harder. I suspect this isn't the only like change they're going to make to this deck. I think 3/1 Storm is like a great like first step, and then we probably will start to see things like War Machine and Legion themselves lose power as well. Like whether this deck should exist at all is like a whole other conversation. If we want to go out right away and like just kill the interaction, like I think they could do that. I think it'd be to the detriment of the game. I think they should just make it harder and harder to do. Like I was saying, just make their power like less and less. Maybe increase the cost of War Machine even. Maybe make him a 5 as well, so you can't do 1, 2, 3 like 3, 4, 5 Storm War Machine Legion. Sorry. But like this, I think is a good first step, and I'm excited to see if we can like find the right level of power that this deck should be at. Now to move on to the more exciting news, the buffs, the things, taking the older cards or the cards that you have already and making them better. This is the kind of stuff I love to see. I love to see when the OTA is more like on the ratio like of the, like buffs to nerfs. Like there's more buffs. I hope that like some of these will be like impactful enough to actually make like changes in the meta game. So let's go through them and see what's going on here. So the first one is to a very recent card, to Zombie Galacti. So Zombie Galacti is getting a buff. It's going from 7/4 to a 7/5. So same ability, it's still going to transform all the copies into itself. But now it has just one more base power. So they straight up admitted that they were going pretty low on him because they're kind of cautious on like how much power can you put into Zombie Galacti before it becomes like too much. This is the kind of card that if it becomes too strong, it's just going to overwhelm everybody, right? You could potentially be getting out all the different copies of him on the board and flooding the area with let's say 7/12s, right? Like depending on how much buffs you do, you got like 4 or 5 copies of this on the board, and the last turn suddenly everything transforms into it. You're getting so many like sudden increase of power that people weren't expecting, right? Especially because with like hand buffs, you can't even be sure if they have it in their hand or not. You do get the little indicator that the cards that they're playing are the Zombie Galacti cards, so you kind of know like which lanes will transform. But there's no for sure guaranteed way to know how much power he's going to have when it comes down. This is probably a safe experiment here, going from 7/4 to 7/5. 1 extra power could change the dynamic here. Personally, I don't have the card yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to get it or not. But from what I've seen when it's played, it hasn't been very substantial. I think it's going to need a little bit more than 7/5. Like maybe if it was 7/6, like then like as a baseline 7/6, then that might be something. Or I'm totally off base here. We're going to find that 7/5 is just overpowered. Like maybe like all this hand buff stuff just needed 1 extra power, right? Who knows? This is the stuff that you're going to want to do with it is going to be like Gwenpool and things and Forge, like things that buff the power before it comes down. You want to be doing as many of those as you can. Viv Vision, I think, is another one of those cards that helps out with this. The bigger you can get your Zombie Galacti, the better chance you'll have of winning despite the randomness. It reminds me a lot of a card like Hela, where you can't exactly control where the hella revived cards are coming down, but you can kind of aim it with like, you know, filling up your own locations and stuff. So in a similar way, you can kind of aim where the transformations will happen just based on like where you're playing your cards. And I think it's interesting. Like it's a way to like make your location placement more meaningful than just, you know, am I winning here or what does this location say? I'm happy to see like where they're going with this, as long as it doesn't become a distraction, right? Like if the whole meta suddenly becomes, oh, Zombie Galacti is the best deck, then that's not going to be fun. But if it's a deck, then, you know, like we'll see if that's worth playing against, right? Our next card is going to be Orca. So this is like a often forgotten card from like ages ago. It's one of the first like, you know, big sixes you're going to see in your collection. But they're starting to give it some love. So here we go. So Orca, the stat is staying the same. So it's still going to be a 6/11. But instead of having its ongoing ability, ongoing +5, if it's the only card in your location, then it's getting a +7. So it's going from effectively, you know, a 6/16 to a 6/18. I think the only other 18 we have is the Destroyer, who, when playing him, blows up the rest of your board. So this is pretty impactful in terms of like sheer numbers. Does it mean you're going to start seeing like, you know, Orca as like a finisher and like a ramp deck, or the kind of thing where it's like, oh, I need a big 6, like let's play Orca? I don't know, because that ongoing is still very restrictive. Like being the only card in the lane, it just makes it very, you know, vulnerable. It means you can't, you know, protect it. You can't throw down like Cosmo or armor. You can't use it to shore up another lane that you're, you know, fighting one-on-one for. Like, you know, if you've got that like location that you and your opponent are back and forth playing cards to kind of incrementally gain value, you can't suddenly drop Orca for an extra 18. Like, no, it'd only be 11. Also, now that Shang-Chi has changed to only target one card in the lane, it's going to always kill this Orca, because that's the only thing that's going to be there. So I don't know if this is the kind of thing that helps. Like, I can't even picture a deck that wants this. Like, does Hela need another 6 that's like conditionally big when there's like, you know, just static big things like Infinite at 620, and that doesn't even matter if it's in a different lane? You know, we have Galactus First Steps now is the kind of card that just grows bigger in your hand. So it's typically, like, it can get to be about a 6/18. So why do we need Orca, right? There's the weird archetype that's always kind of been like weirdly fringed with like Namora, where you're trying to use that to, you know, splash 5 extra power on your cards that are by itself in a lane. But that's a 5 cost, and Orca's 6. So you're not even really getting in an opportunity where you can not often play Orca before a Namora. So, like, what I think that maybe we could have gone even further with this buff. Like, maybe we could have given Orca some more on his base stats. I personally think, like, him and both Namor, the 2 cards that have this ongoing, if they're the only cards there, I think that they could use a straight-up rework. Because I don't know if, like, I get the theme of it, that they're like, you know, the big thing in the ocean, and they're kind of just, you know, surrounded by water. But like, I think that we could go differently in like modern Marvel Snap. This is the kind of ability that they made like when Marvel Snap was young and they were just kind of throwing out abilities everywhere. But I think we could give it a new fresh coat of paint. But I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to find out that like we're going to see 6/18 Orcas taking over the metagame. Next exciting buff is to Odin. Odin is getting 1 power. He's going up from 6/8 to 6/9. We typically, you see Odin a lot in like early gameplay. Like, you know, newer players will see like the whole like Wong Odin combo of on reveals kind of taking off. I think Odin gets a lot of play in like limited time game modes like high voltage as well. As for ladder play, the big Odin decks, typically I remember seeing like those Hammer Bros deck style, you know, like with Thor and Beta Ray Bill, just so that you play those 0 costs on the final turn with Odin and just proc a whole bunch of doubles. Odin itself getting an extra base power means that if you're doing that, then the location that you're playing Odin isn't just a straight up write-off. Going from 6'8 to 6'9 isn't exactly, huge, but it is notable that we're inching Odin closer and closer to being a good payoff himself, rather than just like what is he contributing to with the on reveals. Most on reveal Odin strategies are trying to go wide. They're trying to okay, how can we deliver out the points outside of this location? Things like Ironheart or White Tiger, because they send points outside of the Odin lane. So when Odin is coming, you can kind of math it out and be like, oh, okay, it's only the X amount of power in this location. I can win this one. So the more and more power we're putting into this location, the harder that becomes to win. It's kind of the inverse of what we were just talking about with Storm. How if you're making Storm weaker, you're making it easier for your opponent to win that location. But by making Odin stronger, you're trying to make sure that you can win the location you're playing Odin in, as opposed to just spreading it out. So we'll see if this actually makes a difference. It's been a long time since Thor Beta Ray Bill has been the go-to. It used to be kind of tech deck, where it was the style of play minimal points early and then explosive points at the end, where you would go hammer and then Shang-Chi over here or Enchantress over here or Rogue over here. That hasn't really been the direction that they want Marvel Snap to go in recently. They've been tuning down the tech cards. So without that kind of support, the second arm of the strategy, what does Thor and Beta Ray Bill have to offer themselves? Odin getting more power can help with that, because if you're playing Odin just to buff the Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, then at least he has a little bit more beef to himself. So we'll see if that changes anything. Wave is going from 3.5 to 3.6. 3.6 with upside is just something I didn't think we would. If you asked me a year ago, we wouldn't be seeing, but here we are, right? You can make, and I've seen people do it, you can make the argument that Luna Snow is not all pure upside, because it gives the +1 to your opponent with the ice. And I suspect we'll see similar arguments with Wave, because it's still going to let your opponent have a ramp card to 4. But I think this is a good way to at least put them on par with each other. For a while, Luna Snow has been just the go-to. Okay, yeah, I need a 3 that ramps. Here we go, 3/6. Give me extra energy return. Perfect. But this offers a different strategy, where now it's a 3/6 that lets you just immediately skip your 6 or even 7 costs now down to turn 4. We're starting to see more and more experimentation with 7 cost without having a built-in cost reduction in it, like Zombie Galacti, who also got buffed this week, right? So maybe Wave is a way of helping out with that. You can it lets you play more cards. If your 7 cost is going to be 4, obviously you could do Wave on turn 5 instead of just on turn 3 right away. So if you do Wave on turn 5, that means your big guy, your 6, your 7, whatever it's going to be, is only going to cost 4, so you can go 4 and 2, right? With 6 power on her own, it definitely makes her competitive with the other ramp cards. Although, that being said, we haven't seen much of, at 3.5, we haven't really seen much of her compared to Hope Summers at 3.4, or even the new Superior Spider-Man, right? I personally think that this is a good buff. The 3.6 on Wave is just a way to remind everyone that she exists, and to make her good. I'm excited to see where this goes. I like ramp strategies, so I'm definitely going to test this one out. It reminds me of the Electro buff that he just got recently too, going up to 3.5. It looks like they want to make sure that there's more varied options to the strategy, and not just everyone needs Luna Snow. And our last card is White Queen. White Queen is going from 3.4 to 3.5. I'm actually kind of nervous about this one, because the more we make White Queen playable, the better Arishem decks are, right? Because that's like my first thought for White Queen. It's like or Victoria Hand. Those are the two decks that I'm like, here, like, what am I going to do with a created card from my opponent? Arishem would like White Queen for like similar reasons that it used to do like Coulson, right? Like, it's like, if I have all this extra energy and I can just take your best card, or your highest cost card, then I'm going to be playing that better than you are. And with Victoria Hand decks, like, it does a lot of stuff with like Mirage already, where you can take cards from their hands, copy it. Mirage and Misery has been kind of a mainstay in Victoria Hand for basically since the deck's existence. So now that we have White Queen, we're going to be able to do a similar thing, where we're going to be able to take copy the biggest card, and then even potentially Misery and do it again, right? Does this make a change for Victoria Hand decks to go from playing a bunch of small guys to being able to play, some actual beef with it as well? Like, a lot of V hand strategies are centered around the amount of demons that they can put out, the amount of copies of Victoria Hand herself they can put out. But if you have things like this White Queen that's taking, say a 5 cost or a 6 cost, then you can pair that with the demons on turn 6. Especially if you're running Quinjet, then you're even getting it reduced. 3/5 has, I think, been a long-waited change for White Queen. She's kind of fallen behind in like this era of like 3 costs with upside being generally kind of skewing towards more on the 3/5 side than like the old 3/3 and 3/4 days. So I think it's a change that's been coming for a while, and it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. So this OTA overall, I think like I said before, I'm excited to see how this one goes. I'm actually optimistic on this one. This is the kind of OTA that's going to get me to try a couple of different decks, the kind of thing that I think could actually change stuff. Victoria Hand decks have been doing this dance where they're either the best deck or they're like, 1 or 2 under. And maybe it's getting some support here from this. Who knows? Zombie Galacti, I'm interested to see if that takes off in any kind of way. And I'm happy to see nerfs to move, definitely. Not that it's going to change, like I said earlier, it's not going to make you take Sparky out. But anytime we can lower the power on a deck that's already getting like super high, or making it more difficult to do that, I'm interested in seeing if that helps balance at all. But let me know if you guys have different opinions. Let me know if I'm missing something totally obvious, like if it's like, this card that just got buffed is going to make this card so much better. I'm probably missing it. So tell me what I'm missing here, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.